Shalom, shalom, peace and blessings. Now let's get straight into it. So today we're going to go back into Second Esdras chapter 11, and Lord willing, we'll finish out. We have part one where mainly I was going over the 12 different Caesars that's being described here in Second Esdras, the 11th chapter, and really going into how they related to the scriptures, how they related to the time period shortly before, at least 100 years or so before Yahushua was born, and then 100 years or so after Yahushua was born, or Christ, and again how it related to our people in the book at that time, the Israelites, and how these different Caesars conquered our people, so on and so forth, and it's everything else involving them. So if you haven't seen that yet, you can check out the first part. Now we'll go into the actual chapter and again try to finish it out. So let's get it. So this is Second Esdras, the 11th chapter. Let's start at verse 1. Then saw I a dream, and behold, there came up from the sea an eagle, which had 12 feathered wings and 3 heads. So I have this sheet here that pretty much goes into all the verses, breaking them down. So verse 1, we went over the sea. That's referring to the other nations. So an eagle came out of the sea, meaning came from the other nations. Okay. And we went into the eagle slightly, but there's a few things I wanted to bring back up that I didn't touch on in the first part. Number one, it was interesting. So right after I filmed part one, I ended up watching the Planet of the Apes, the newer movie, which I believe is called the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. End up watching that like a day after, and then seeing this eagle here was very interesting. So the main ape or a chimp or what have you in the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, his name is Noah. So as most of y'all probably already know, the apes in the Planet of the Apes series, going all the way back to the 60s to the original Planet of the Apes, is referring to so-called black people. The whole series is essentially about so-called black people coming back into power and ruling over the so-called white man, and really his fear of it. That's pretty much what the whole series is about. When you pay attention, you see so many different parables between the movies. So before I watched this movie, I went back and watched the other movies, which is, it says right here, I went back and watched Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and The War of the Planet of the Apes. So just so I can be caught up before I watch this one, and man, it's a lot of symbology there when you know what you're looking at. It's definitely a lot there, and it makes so much sense, again, once you know what you're looking at. But what I wanted to say here in particular, so again, his name is this ape, the main ape in the newer movie, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. His name is Noah. Let you know, they understand that Noah was a so-called black man, but also they had control of the eagles, and they were actually called the Eagle Clan in the movie, Noah and his clan, which took place, it said, 300 years after the last movie. But essentially, they could train and use eagles at their disposal for their clan to have, to do different things that they needed to do within their clan or their tribe. Really, they probably wanted to use the word tribe, but just didn't want to make it too obvious. But either way, the eagle symbology there to me is also in reference to Esau, just like we see here in Second Esdras chapter 11, an eagle which had 12 feathered wings and 3 heads. All throughout the scriptures, you see this different symbology from Esau being compared to the eagle directly. Let's go over a few examples. Let's get Jeremiah. We'll start at verse 20 in the 49th chapter. So it says, therefore hear the counsel of the Lord, that he hath taken against Edom, and his purposes that he hath proposed against the inhabitants of Teman. Teman was the grandfather of Esau. if I'm not mistaken. I think so. I think he's the grandfather of Esau. When I say Esau, the actual man Esau, the twin brother of Jacob. But says, surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their inhabitants desolate with them. Okay. That's Esau's fate, meaning the so-called white man or really just so-called white people. All right. Verse 21, the earth is moved at the noise of their fall. At the cry, the noise thereof was heard in the Red Sea. Verse 22, behold, he shall come up and fly as the eagle and spread his wings over Basra. And at that day shall the heart of the mighty men of Edom be as the heart of a woman in her pangs. So this is showing you more symbology, or Esau being put in a parabolic sense or tied to the eagle. Now, the eagle every time is not tied to Esau, but that is, again, one of his symbols, okay, throughout the scriptures. And then, as I said in part 1, we know that the bald eagle is one of the main symbols of America, or the almost like the mascot for America, right? The animal, whatever they would call it. But in the movie, it was also interesting too, and why I'm bringing this up also is, if for y'all that's seen it, I don't want to go too deep into it. I mean, it's been out for like 2 months now, so if you ain't seen it, I mean, you know, you might not even plan on seeing it. Maybe you're waiting for it to like hit one of the streaming sites or something. Maybe it already is. I don't know. But either way, so one of the so-called white men in this movie, he mentioned that he was studying the Roman Empire. Okay, he mentioned he was studying the Roman Empire, and that's exactly who we're talking about here in this chapter. So was that on accident? You know, they're called the Eagle Clan. We talking about Roman Caesars and the Roman Empire. And in this movie, they got the Eagle Clan. And then this man says how he's been studying the Roman Empire. I think not. So they know who they are according to scripture. All right. And they know that they're going to be put into captivity, which is pretty much what this symbolizes, because the Eagle Clan, or Noah and his clan, the apes, they had the eagles in captivity, essentially as handmaids and servants for them. Okay. Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 49, the Lord shall bring a nation against thee from afar, or from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. So again, eagle is not only referring to Esau, but I mean, we see it multiple times. I think we already went over the book of Obadiah, where verse 4 essentially says, thou that though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thou set thy nest amongst the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith the Lord. This is referring to Esau. Okay. And let's grab this real quick, because, you know, when I say that the children of Israel will take the nations, including the so-called white man, into captivity, it's not anything I just want to be true or I'm making up. This is just directly stated in the scriptures multiple times. This is the book of Isaiah. This is a classic. Most brothers probably already know this, but just to grab this real quick so we can go back into the chapter. Isaiah chapter 14, verse 1. For the Lord will have mercy on Jacob and will yet choose Israel and set them in their own land, and the strangers, which are the other nations, shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. Okay. Verse 2, and the people shall take them and bring them to their place. So that's referring to Israel taking other nations and putting them in their place. And the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord, okay, for servants and handmaids. Just like the eagle In the Eagle clan or Noah, in Noah's clan, the eagle was a servant, all right, a handmaid. And they shall take them captives, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. Okay. Can't talk your way out of this. And again, it's stated in several other places in the scriptures, and we went over it in other lessons as well. So I don't want to take too much time on this particular topic, but just showing you that Esau, this is referring to the 12 Caesars. This is the Roman Empire being mentioned. Somebody on the last video had this weird comment. Anytime I see someone make a comment and they seem to be like somebody that's super Christian and or they so-called, I could tell just from that comment that they probably is so-called white man or woman trying to teach me, then I just completely ignore it. I don't even respond. I just read it and keep going. That last comment said something about they doubt this is the 12 Caesars being mentioned. But as we continue to go through, you're going to see is indisputable. Okay, this is exactly what this prophecy is in reference to. Speaking of prophecy and what people say, Esau is the so-called white man. Okay, it's very blatant. It's very clear. Once you know prophecy, once you know history, and you understand scriptures, you know that Esau is the so-called white man. All right, up today. But anyways, let's keep going. Verse 2, back in 2nd Esdras chapter 11. And I saw, and behold, she spread her wings over all the earth, and all the winds of the air blew on her and were gathered together. Verse 3, and I beheld, and out of her feathers there grew other contrary feathers, and they became little feathers and small. So the contrary feathers, they were contrary because the Caesars, not all 12, but especially after Augustus, pretty much, they all were fighting for kingship. They were fighting to be rulers, and they were contrary against each other. The so-called white man is known for doing that. This is not the only empire that did this. So pretty much what they do, like they fight amongst each other. Especially if it comes to rulership, like us in our right mind, we won't do it. Even us ruling in Europe, it didn't really go down like that. Most of the kings that came into rulership, for the most part, at least, it was through legacy, and that king, naturally died. And even the queens, of course, that did happen to rule too as well. But, we weren't just taking each other out. Like, these people were poisoning each other, assassinating each other, plotting against each other. That's why they're contrary feathers. Okay. That's why the scriptures describe them as such, because they were always going at each other. And we're going to see that more as we keep going. But the 3 heads, I believe, is mentioned here as well in verse 3. And I beheld, and out of her feathers there grew other contrary feathers, and they became little feathers and small. Oh, that's verse 4. So verse 4, but her heads were at rest. The head in the midst was greater than the other, yet rested it with the residue. So the 3 heads is Julius Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus. They're known in history as the first triumvirate, and the head in the middle is Julius Caesar because he was the main Caesar. This is, where they pretty much got this descendant line from, is Julius Caesar. He kicked this off. All right, pretty much kicked off that era. But let's go to the first triumvirate. All right, the first triumvirate was an informal political alliance among 3 prominent politicians in the late Roman Republic. Pompey, or Pompeius, or Crassus, and Julius Caesar. All right. Of course, they had these long names. I'm just going by what they mainly know by. The Republican Constitution had many veto points. In order to bypass constitutional obstacles and force through the political goals of the 3 men, they forged in secret an alliance where they promised to use their respective influence to support each other. The triumvirate was not a formal magistracy, nor did it achieve a long-lasting domination over state affairs. So the scriptures here are prophesying about these three men coming together and forming a secret alliance, which was major for the Roman Republic. All right, especially, involving Julius Caesar, because again, we talked about that in the first part, his impact on the Roman Empire or the Roman Republic was massive. All right, and still is seen today. That's the one thing about the so-called white man. He know his folks, and he gonna exalt them. Of course, because they are in rulership right now. We have to learn about some of their men. Of course, they try to take our history for their own too as well. But either way, when it is an actual Edomite that was in rulership or Edomites, they make sure you learn about them. Like pretty much you can go to anyone and say Julius Caesar and they've heard that name before, Alexander the Great. They can remember that. Even folks that's been out of school for 20 years, like, yeah, I remember hearing something about Alexander the Great. Yeah, because when it's actually them, they make sure you learn about it. They really do. Because they look up to these people, man, especially when they were known to be conquerors of so-called black people. They really look up to these people. But anyways, so yeah, this could not be talking about anything else. This is the three heads is undoubtedly talking about the first triumvirate, okay, with Pompey, Crassus, and Julius Caesar. All right, and the head is in the middle again was Julius Caesar. All right. Verse 5, moreover, I beheld, and lo, the eagle flew with her feathers and rained upon earth and over them that dwelt therein. Verse 6, and I saw that all things under heaven were subject unto her, and no man spake against her, no, not one creature upon earth. So this is when the Roman Empire was at its great height. Nobody spake against her, meaning none of the other nations came up against Rome. Well, they attempted to, but nobody was able to conquer Rome, because this is, again, when Rome was coming into its power, and, they end up taking us into captivity. Well, we were pretty much in captivity by the Roman Empire at the time Yahushua was born, but, it really cranked off with the quote unquote, Roman Jewish War. All right. In about 70 AD. But either way, let's keep going. Verse 7, and I beheld, and lo, the eagle rose upon her talent and spake to her feather, saying, verse 8, watch not all at once, sleep every one in his own place, and watch by course. Verse 9, but let the heads be preserved for the last. So essentially what these verses are going into is that all the emperors had to rule for a specific period of time. Sleep everyone in its own place. Everyone couldn't rule at once. So they all took their turns ruling. That's pretty much what that's prophesying about, how these different Caesars and different emperors, they ended up ruling at their own dispensation of time, or in that dispensation of time. All right, I think I had some verses here for verses 5 and 6, scriptures for verses 5 and 6. Rome had control of all the known world at this point. Said that other nations tried to come against them to no avail. So, yeah, this is referring to the Roman Empire. So we had that in Daniel 7 and 7. Let's get Daniel 7 and 7 real quick. After this, I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. So this is referring to the Roman Empire. Okay, that's been confirmed through scriptures. Everybody know that. All right, verse 8, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn. You know what that little horn is? Is referring to this country here, America, the reincarnation of the Roman Empire. They just don't tell you that, but this is Rome all over again. but not just Rome. It's also Babylon all over again. Not only that, is ancient Kemet all over again, because they've taken different aspects of all of these ancient kingdoms and brought them all together into one. They just don't tell you that. They call it the United States of America, but this is really just modern day Rome. Okay, from the different political practices, from the different gods that they worship here in the different belief systems. All right, their morality, the army, everything about this empire is mainly Rome, but also again they took some of the aspects from ancient Greece, ancient Babylon, and also even ancient Kemet. Okay. Before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. 3 of the first horns plucked up by his roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of man, and a mouth speaking great things. That's the media. Okay, that's the mouth of this beast speaking great things, great blasphemies, like it says in Revelation, the 13th chapter. Okay, that's referring to the same thing, this country. Okay. Modern day Babylon. All right. The land of confusion. That's why so much confusion here. So much going on, because this is Babylon. They did this on purpose. Nothing is new under the sun. Right. They didn't just come up with this country and the quote unquote constitution and all this stuff out of nowhere. They took example from previous kingdoms. OK, they just don't call it a kingdom. They just don't say this is Esau's kingdom. This is our kingdom. They don't identify themselves, so you don't know what's going on. This is chaos. This is confusion. Okay, but they know it. They just don't tell that to you. All right, so it's our job to decipher these things through prophecy and through scripture, so that, we understand what's going on in our people. They can finally come to an understanding too, which, as time goes by, they won't have a choice. Like in this current political election, I mean, it's really got people messed up. They're looking at Joe Biden and he looking like he about 4 breaths away from death. So, I mean, they not trusting him. And then in Trump, he's been stamped as this racist. Not saying he's not racist, but, they try to make him appear to be the epitome of racism, like he the only racist person in existence, which I would argue that Joe Biden has, on the surface at least, said and done more racist things than Trump has. But either way, again, I'm not saying Trump is better. I'm just saying that Joe Biden just get too many passes, at least from our people. But if you look at these two guys, people don't even know who to vote for anymore. They kind of, they starting to let you know, like, hey, it really don't matter. Okay, it don't matter. Ain't no telling what's going to happen with this, man. I feel that, Lord willing, it's not, but my goodness, I feel like something crazy about to happen soon, because this is like a nightmare. If you are a voter, you probably in chaos right now, unless you a clear quote unquote Trump supporter. But you notice Biden, he doesn't have. I've never heard of a Biden supporter before. I think the 2020 election was the most rigged election ever. I just feel like there's no way Joe Biden won, and there's no way he can win again. If he win again for the second term, I mean, my goodness, is a wrap. This dude is not even coherent. Anyways, this is what Daniel 7 and 8 is referring to. Some people think that the scriptures aren't touching, on this current society. They just view it as, oh yeah, well, that was written 2,000 years ago and all of that. This is referring to this last kingdom that will stand. Okay. That's what that little horn is. And it's described as a little horn because it's an extension of this beast. It's this last little horn. Okay. And the 3 of the first horns plucked up by his roots is referring to how this country was formed from Great Britain, so on and so forth. All right, I believe we went over that in a previous lesson, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. In the mouth speaking great things, again, that's the media and all the different blasphemies, my body, my choice, and all these different things that we're being told. Okay. Like Christianity is the way. We're not giving any other way. to see things. That's blasphemy. The transgender movement, all these different things, is that mouth speaking great things, great blasphemies on the earth. All right, because this place is modern day Rome. All right. Another thing I wanted to touch on, let's get Daniel chapter 4 and verse 17. This matter is by the decree of the watchers and the demand of the word of the holy ones, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will, and set it up over it the basis of men. You know who the basis of men is described in the scriptures? It's the so-called white man, or Esau. And when I say the so-called white man, let me make this very clear to you. I'm not referring to your neighbor. I'm not referring to your coworkers that you're cool with. I'm referring to the so-called elite, the decision makers. Okay, the so-called white men at the top that have been purposefully oppressing our people. Okay, and when I say oppressing, I don't mean necessarily in a physical sense, but in a spiritual sense that puts up all this propaganda and confusion to derail our people out from the scriptures and knowing who they actually are. That's what I'm referring to when I say the so-called white man. I'm not talking about the average so-called white man. So, people that put emphasis on them, I'll never understand it, because just know that's always a context when I'm saying this, because I couldn't care less about them, the average so-called white man. I'm not giving them any power. I'm only talking about people that's actually out here putting witchcraft on our people, because the average so-called, white man or person in general, whatever, man or woman, they only a couple of steps ahead of our people. They don't know what's going on out here either. They still think they ruled in Europe. They still think, quote unquote, this is their country and all of that, not knowing that we were here first. They lost too. You just kind of really shouldn't be paying them no attention. But anyways, the basis of men, if we go to Job, the 30th chapter, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is referring to Esau, and Esau was known to be the children of base men. Let's get Job chapter 30 and verse 6. To dwell in the cliffs of the valleys and caves of the earth, the Caucasus Mountains. Okay, to dwell in the cliffs of the valleys, in caves of the earth, and in the rocks. Let's get verse 5 and then bring a little bit more context to that. They were driven forth from among men. They cried after them as after a thief. Verse 6, to dwell in the cliffs of the valleys, in caves of the earth, and in the rocks. Verse 7, among the bushes they brayed, under the nettles they were gathered together. Verse 8, they were children of fools, yea, children of base men. They were viler than the earth. This is referring to Esau in his caveman state, which that's their roots. The so-called white man is from either Mount Seir or the Caucasus Mountains. That's his only real homelands. Okay, everything else he had to conquer and take over, interbreed with the people, so on and so forth. But that's where they're originally from. So anytime you see this in the scriptures, the cliffs of the valleys or the caves of the earth, they're probably talking about the so-called white man, because that's literally where they're from. Okay, and in the Revelation 20 lesson, I went deeper into that so you can see, like, when we say they cave people and stuff, we're not just making it up. That's literally their roots. Okay. But I'm kind of going into this because I'm just bringing a little bit more evidence that this is a so-called white man being mentioned. And we know that Julius Caesar was a so-called white man. Everybody should pretty much know that. And you have different roots to Julius Caesar, being an Edomite. When I say an Edomite, not just as in being so-called white, meaning biblically, he's being traced back to the man Esau. Okay. But this was all prophesied. That's why this is amazing to see that this was written hundreds of years before it happened. Okay. The scoffers would try to tell you otherwise, but that's not the case. This is prophecy. This is scripture. All right. one last thing on the Roman Empire. Let's get Daniel chapter 2 and verse 40. And the fourth kingdom, all right, shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things. And as iron that breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. Verse 41. And whereas they sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. See, those are the contrary feathers. But there shall be in it of the strength of the iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. So when it comes to the Roman Empire, again, they were going at each other's neck, and they were of the same stock. Sometimes the sons would kill the father would kill the son, the assistants would kill the king or the emperor at that time, whatever the case. They were going at each other's neck. So that shows how they were divided. Okay. And the iron, they literally used iron in the Roman Empire, but also that shows, they were strong but divided. Okay. Strong really by numbers. And that's the other verse we were reading where the Most High, it was all part of his plan to put Esau in rulership at this time. Okay. And he would give the kingdom to whomsoever he wants, and even the bases of men, meaning even the so-called white man. And it was meant for him to rule then, it's meant for him to rule now for his dispensation of time. And it's over with. He was the elder of Jacob and Esau, so he's been given his time to rule, and after that, it's a wrap. And then just how it was prophesied way back in Genesis chapter 25, around the 25th and 26th verse, then Esau is going to take his heel, all right, and then rule forever. But anyways, I might put some scriptures on screen to deal with that, but I know how I get. I might go too deep into it, so let me just keep going. Verse 42, and as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. We're going to read more about that. And we pretty much saw it already in part 1. The kingdom is partly strong, but also partly broken because, again, they're divided. All right. Verse 43, and whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. A lot of nations that, they have a loss of melanin per se, is because of the so-called white man mingling with them and kind of intermixing. Because all people before Esau were people of color, everybody. That's why some people, it's ridiculous to think that Japheth and his line were so-called white or anything like that. That's not the case. Everyone were people of color, everybody. Not the exact same color, but you've seen some indigenous like Indians, and their actual skin is a darker brown than most so-called black people, right? That's how all Aboriginal people looked until Esau came and mingled themselves with the seed of men. All right. But they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. All right. Because again, this is the so-called white man. When I say that, I already explained that, but this is the so-called white man in his prime. This is him at his best. Us at our best, we're ruling in nothing but righteousness. We're not taking each other out. We're not doing none of this. Even a small sin is great to us, but these people were degenerates, So, that's why they were divided, partly strong and partly broken. All right, let's keep going. Verse 10, and I beheld, and lo, the voice went not out of her heads, but from the midst of her body. Verse 11, and I numbered her contrary feathers, and behold, there were 8 of them. So those are the 8 contrary feathers. When you look at, like we go here to the list of the Roman emperors, when we look at life details. If you look here, Augustus, he was not one of the contrary feathers, but if you look here, died probably of natural causes, murdered at the instigation of Caligula, murdered in conspiracy involving the Praetorian Guard and senators, probably poisoned by his wife, Agrippina, committed suicide after being deserted, murdered, committed suicide. These are the contrary feathers. Okay, after the first four emperors that pretty much all had some type of end, like committed suicide or being murdered by their own. You know, like my boy got murdered by his wife, Claudius, poisoned by his wife. So those are the contrary feathers. Like I said, either them being taken out, you know, in a untimely death, and also them being just combating against each other. That's what makes them the contrary feathers. Verse 12, and I looked, and behold, on the right side there arose one feather and reigned over all the earth. This is going back and talking about Julius Caesar. Okay, that's that one feather. Verse 13, and so it was that when it rained, the end of it came, and the place thereof appeared no more. So the next following stood up and reigned and had a great time. So how do we know this is referring to Julius Caesar? And then the next following stood up is referring to Augustus, because it says it had a great time. A great time, meaning he ruled for a long time. Augustus ruled for 40 years. That's that great time. You see, because he was the next following up. He ruled right after Julius Caesar. You see? So that's what this prophecy is in reference to. Augustus ruling after Julius Caesar. And when they went back here, 12 is kind of going back to the beginning, and we're about to go all the way down to the 12. So you're going to see this is exactly what it's referring to. So verse 12 again, and I looked, and behold, on the right side there arose one feather and reigned over all the earth. Verse 13, and so it was that when it rained, the end of it came, and the place thereof appeared no more. This is referring to Julius Caesar dying. So the next following stood up and reigned and had a great time. Verse 14, and it happened that when it rained, the end of it came also, like as the first, so that it appeared no more. Referring to Augustus's end too as well. All right. Another thing, most of the rulers weren't in power for that long as well. All right. I think I mentioned some of those. These are just really notes for me. But verse 14, yes, just how Caesar ruled and failed, so did Augustus. All right. Now, here's another hint that we know exactly who this is referring to. Verse 15, then came there a voice into it and said, Hear, thou that hast been born rule over the earth so long, this I say unto thee, before thou beginnest to appear no more. Verse 17, there shall none after thee attain unto thy time, neither unto the half thereof. So what this is saying is, this prophecy is telling us that after Augustus, nobody ruled that long. Not even to the half of it. So look, Tiberius is 22 years. Really, it's been reported that Augustus ruled longer. But either way, if you want to take that technical, that would be slightly over half of it, obviously. But after Tiberius, look, 3 years, 13 years, 13 years, 7 months, 3 months, 8 months. Vespasian, 9 years. Titus, 2 years. Domitian, 15 years. So nobody ruled nearly as long as Augustus, not even to the half of his time, is what it's saying. Okay, because Augustus ruled for 40 years. All right. From 63 BC all the way into 14 BC. All right. So that's what this prophecy is telling us. All right. There shall none after thee attain unto thy time, meaning none will rule as nearly as long as Augustus, neither unto the half thereof. Okay, now you starting to see that this is exactly, these 12 Caesars or 12 emperors is exactly what this prophecy is going into. It's becoming more and more, indisputable at this point. Like that person, but the last video, I don't think this is. Can you consider this isn't the Roman Empire? Whatever they say, I get out of here. Anyways, verse 18. Then arose a third and reigned as the other before, and appeared no more also. Why does it say the third? It's talking about the third emperor, because after Augustus died, it was Tiberius who ruled, and then, died too as well, just like Augustus did. Okay, that's referring to Tiberius. So let's get to verse 19. So went it with all the residue one after another, as that everyone reigned, and then appeared no more. Just saying how they all ruled for their dispensation of time and they died. Okay. Normally in a tumultuous way. Verse 20. Then I beheld, and lo, in process of time, the feathers that followed stood up upon the right side, that they might rule also. And some of them ruled, but within a while they appeared no more. Verse 21, for some of them were set up, but ruled not. Okay. The feathers on the left was the first 6, and the feathers on the right were the last 6 feathers, meaning the first 6 emperors and the last 6 emperors. Okay. And the little, let's go to verse 21 first. For some of them, well, we read that verse 22, and so like after this, I looked, and behold, the 12 feathers appeared no more, nor the 2 little feathers. Okay, the 12 feathers appeared no more, nor the 2 little feathers. Verse 23, and there was no more upon the eagle's body, but 3 heads that rested, and 6 little wings. So let's get that. Verse 22 is still referring to the Roman Caesars, or the 12 emperors, just transitioning to the different dynasties within the 12 emperors, or the 12 Caesars. All right. And a little means less significant or contrary feathers in the 3 heads. So the 3 heads that rested are the triumvirate. Okay. And the 6 little wings were Caligula, Claudius, Nero, Galba, Otho, and Vitellius. The 3 heads that rested were Vespasian and his 2 sons, Titus and Domitian, the Flavian dynasty. Okay, we're going to see that. But the 6 little wings, they all did not rule near as long. But we know Nero, he ruled for 15 years or so. 13 years. But those are the 6 little wings being described here. All right. And there was no more upon the eagle's body, but 3 heads that rested, in 6 little wings. Verse 24, then saw I also that 2 little feathers divided themselves from the 6, and remained under the head that was upon the right side, for the 4 continued in their place. So the head is Domitian, and his 2 sons, the 2 little feathers, are his 2 sons. Okay, we talked about them last time. I said Domitian. Excuse me, I meant Vespasian. Vespasian and his 2 sons. Okay, Titus and Domitian. All right, those are the 2 little feathers. The 2 little feathers are Titus and Domitian, because they divide themselves from the 6, meaning the 6 feathers are the 6 emperors that were on the right, meaning the latter 6, okay, and remain under the head. The head is Vespasian, because he was their father. See, it makes sense, right? 2 little feathers that were under the head. The 2 little feathers is Vespasian's sons. Okay, that was upon the right side. So remember you got 6 feathers on the left, 6 feathers on the right of the eagle. Those are the first 6 emperors and then the last 6 emperors. Okay, that was on the right side, and they ruled. They were the last 3. Okay, so they're on the right side. It's all lining up. For the 4 continued in their place. The 4 that continued in their place was the year of the 4 emperors: Vitellius, Vespasian, Titus, and Domitian. Okay, let's get the year of the 4 emperors. So the year of the 4 emperors was a year in the history of the Roman Empire, AD 69, in which 4 emperors ruled in a remarkable turnover. The 4 emperors were Galba, Otho, Vitellius, and Vespasian. So when it says the 4 continued in their place, that's referring to the year of the 4 emperors. See, it's all lining up. These are all known things in history. Let's get it. So the year of the 4 emperors was a year in the history of the Roman Empire, right where we're reading that, right, in which 4 emperors ruled in a remarkable turnover. The 4 emperors were Galba, Otho, Vitellius, and Vespasian. So all 4 of these emperors ruled in just 1 year. Okay, 1 year, all 4 of these cats ruled, because they didn't rule for that long at all. Galba, Otho, Vitellius, and Vespasian. Okay, Vespasian was at the end of it, but essentially all in 1 calendar year, all 4 of these guys ruled. Okay, that's what it means by the 4 continuing in their place. Verse 25, and I beheld, and lo, the feathers that were under the wing thought to set up themselves and to have rule. Verse 26, and I beheld, and lo, there was one set up, but surely it appeared no more. Referring to the short rulership of Galba. Okay, so in verse 25 is referring to Galba and Otho. Verse 25 again, and beheld, and lo, the feathers that were under the wing thought to set themselves up and to have rule. Galba and Otho. Verse 26, and I beheld, and lo, there was one set up, but shortly it appeared no more. Look at this, 7 months and 7 days. Otho, only 3 months and 1 day, and committed suicide. What else could this be referring to? It's all matching up. It's all lining up, man. Okay. Again, and I beheld, and lo, there was one set up, but shortly, referring to his only 3 months in rulership, it appeared no more. Well, actually, this was referring to Galba, and then Otho is verse 27. And the second was sooner away than the first, because as we see, Otho was sooner than the first, 3 months and 1 day, and Galba ruled for 7 months. So Otho was sooner away than the first, referring to Galba. You see? And it says here too, the year of the 4 emperors. Okay. So this is the 4 that continued in their place. And this is referring to Otho and Galba. All right. And I beheld, and lo, the 2 that remained thought also in themselves to reign. This is referring to the other 2 in the year of the 4 emperors. All right. That's what I got right. Verse 28. Yeah, the 2 that remained are Vitellius and Vespasian. Right. Because they're the last 2 in the year of the 4 emperors. All right. Verse 29, and when they so thought, behold, there awaked one of the heads that were at rest. Namely, it that was in the midst, for that was greater than the 2 other heads. So verse 29 is referring to Vespasian, because it was greater than his 2 sons, Titus and Domitian, because he was their father, right? So it's referring to the same thing here. All right. That was that head that was awakened. It was Vespasian. Greater than the 2 heads is greater than his 2 sons. It's all lining up. It's all lining up, man. Can't be talking about nothing else, man. Verse 30, and then I saw that the 2 other heads were joined with it, referring to Titus and Domitian. Okay. Verse 31, and behold, the head was turned with them that were with it, and did eat up the two feathers under the wing that would have reigned. Okay, this is back referring to Vespasian. All right, and behold, the head was turned with them that were with it, and did eat up the two feathers under the wing that would have reigned. Verse 32, but this head put the whole earth in fear, and bare rule in it over all those that dwelt upon the earth with much oppression, and it had been the governance of the world more than all the wings that had been. So why is it saying this? This is referring to the quote unquote Jewish-Roman War, okay, where Vespasian went through and just start causing all type of havoc to the children of Israel. So that's why he is specifically being mentioned for this, because a lot of the other emperors as well, rule with much oppression, but he oppressed our people here directly by causing us to be displaced from Israel or from Jerusalem. Okay. So this was a massive turning point in our people's history, because the second temple was destroyed. Our people had to flee out of the land. Over 1 million of our people were killed during this time. All right, it was a major turning point. All right, that's why this is being singled out in particular. All right, we went into the Roman Jewish War, quote unquote Roman Jewish War, or the siege of Jerusalem, from about 66 AD to 70 AD. All right. So I have some other notes here about the Roman Colosseum, which is one of the new seven wonders of the world. It was built from the spoils of the siege of Jerusalem and the destruction of the temple. Okay. So Vespasian, he headed more destruction directly than any of the other feathers, all right, aka the other emperors, all right, due to the siege of Jerusalem, which we went over a lot in the first part. We can go over it again, but pretty much, man, it was chaos for our people again. Well, you can go into looking at the zealots, the different rebels. It was really something else, where the zealots and the other splinter groups, from what I remember, they actually went through, because Jerusalem at that time was fortified, so it was hard to penetrate. That's why this siege, it didn't happen in just one battle in 1 year. It took several years, but to increase the battle morale for our people, they actually went through and destroyed all the food and things of that nature, so we can hide within the walls, which really ultimately led to our destruction. But yeah, you read up on that if you haven't yet. It's really something else. What happened to our people. And Josephus, he has what's the name of his books? Whatever his name of his books are, he covers the war too as well, or the siege of Jerusalem. If you need to read up on that. Let's grab these scriptures real quick. Said I had Luke 23 verses 28. Okay, let's get Luke chapter 23 and verse 28. But Yahushua turning unto them said, Daughters of Jerusalem, weep not for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. Verse 29, for behold, the days are coming, in the which they shall say, Blessed are the barren, and the wombs that never bare, and the paps which never gave suck. Verse 30, then shall they begin to say to the mountains, Fall on us, and to the hills cover us. Verse 31, for if they do these things in a green tree, what shall be done in the dry? Verse 32, and there were also two other malefactors led with him to be put to death. So this is referring to its double fold, also in the end times, but also referring to just in the more recent prophecy, because sometimes prophecies can be fulfilled twice. All right, sometimes only once. sometimes you read scriptures and they're referring to a future prophecy, and sometimes it's referring to a prophecy that's already been fulfilled. And sometimes that prophecy that's already been fulfilled becomes fulfilled again. Okay. That's what I love about the scriptures, man. It's thousands of years and still relevant. But either way, this is referring to also the siege of Jerusalem, okay, or the quote unquote Roman Jewish war that was really sparked not only by Vespasian, but who really sparked it off and started the hate against our people was Nero. All right. Because he blamed the quote unquote Christians or the Israelites that believed into Christ at this time, not referring to the religion known as Christianity, but the Christians, the followers of Christ. He blamed them for the great fire of Rome. So it was really Nero that started to pop off the oppression of the Israelites. And then it just went on from there. So by the time Vespasian came in, he was all in on taking over Jerusalem. All right. And then his two sons, mainly Titus. It was mainly Titus and Vespasian, and then Domitian ruled after that. But mainly Vespasian and Titus, man, they took over Jerusalem. All right. So that's why verse 32 went into it. All right. More than the wings that had been, so more than the other emperors. Verse 33, and after this I beheld, and lo, the head that was in the midst suddenly appeared no more like as the wings, referring to Vespasian. Okay, verse 34, but there remained the two heads, his two sons, which also in like sort ruled upon the earth and over those that dwelt therein. Okay, so again, 33 is referring to Vespasian and him dying, and then his two sons, verse 34, Titus and Domitian. Okay. So let's get verse 35. And beheld, and lo, the head upon the right side devoured it that was upon the left side. So Domitian had Titus killed his own brother. All right. Again, this kingdom is divided. All right. Contrary feathers. All right. I beheld, and lo, the head upon the right side. On the right side, meaning the latter, Domitian devoured it that was upon the left side, which is Titus. So left meaning descending in chronological order. You have left to right. The eldest being the furthest in the left, and the more recent being all the way to the right. So that's why it says that Domitian was to the right. The head upon the right side devoured it that was upon the left side, referring to Titus. Okay. So according to different accounts, so some accounts say that Domitian died by different, let's see what they have here. Assassinated in a conspiracy of court officials, possibly involving Nerva. That's what they have here on Wikipedia. But also, no, actually, I need to look at Titus. It said died of natural causes. So that's what they have for Titus dying. However, depending on what account that you go into, it showed that Domitian was ultimately actually responsible for his brother's death to get him out of power so he can rule by himself. See, and that's why he only ruled for 2 years. All right. Verse 36, then I heard a voice which said unto me, look before thee and consider the thing that thou seest. So 37 referring to either Yahushua or an archangel speaking to the Roman Empire parabolically, because, of course, the eagle that represents the Roman Empire is not one man talking to another man directly, but just showing in a parabolic sense how this roaring lion, which we know Yahushua is described as a roaring lion, all right, chased out of the wood, and saw that he sent out a man's voice into the eagle and said, hear thou, I will talk with thee, and the highest shall say unto thee, are not thou it that remainest of the four beasts whom I made to reign in my world? Like I says, that who I made to reign in my world. Like we read, the Most High, he will put even the basis of men in rulership. It's all according to his divine ordinance, his divine plan. Okay. That the end of their times might come through them. All right. And then pretty much the rest of the chapter, let's read it. Verse 40. And the fourth came and overcame all the beasts that were past, and had power over the world with great fearfulness, and over the whole compass of the earth with much wicked oppression. And so long time dwelt he upon the earth with deceit. That's this world right now. Or this reincarnated empire Rome. These people rule with deceit because they do not tell you their actual true intentions. They don't say we're oppressing the people, or, we have taxes just to fill our pockets. You're really getting triple, quadruple taxed. Okay. The Federal Reserve is not needed. It's not a government entity. They don't tell you these things. Your money doesn't actually mean anything. It's just a digit in an account because it's not tied to anything, and we can change the amount anytime we want to. Okay. You're constantly under surveillance at all times. These things are not being told to us. These people rule with deceit upon this earth. Okay. Verse 41, for the earth has thou not judged with truth. Verse 42, for thou hast afflicted the meek, the children of Israel, the meek. Okay. Thou hast hurt the peaceable. Thou hast loved liars and destroyed the dwellings of them that brought forth fruit, and hast cast down the walls of such as did thee no harm. Verse 43, therefore is thy wrongful dealing come up unto the highest, and thy pride unto the mighty. Verse 44, the highest also have looked upon the proud times, and behold, they are ended, and his abominations are fulfilled. Verse 45, and therefore appear no more thou eagle, nor thy horrible wings, nor thy wicked feathers, nor thy malicious heads, nor thy hurtful claws, nor all thy vain body. Verse 46, that all the earth may be refreshed and may return, being delivered from thy violence, and that she may hope for the judgment and mercy of him that made her. This is referring to Esau being destroyed forever, like it says in Obadiah, verse 18, right? So when it says that all the earth may be refreshed and may return, and therefore appear no more thou eagle, nor thy horrible wings, nor thy wicked feathers, nor thy malicious heads, nor thy hurtful claws, nor all thy vain body. So you see, it's going to the head, the wicked feathers, the hurtful claws, the vain body. It's referring to Esau being destroyed forever. All right. In the end times. Let's get Obadiah, verse 18. It reads, in the house of Jacob shall be a fire, in the house of Joseph a flame, in the house of Esau for stubble, and they shall kindle in them and devour them, the whole body. All right. The feathers, the heads, the claws, so on and so forth. And there shall not be any remaining of the house of Esau, for the Lord hath spoken it. So this is a direct link, or what we call a precept, to this verse. Read it one more time. And therefore appear no more thou eagle. We've already established that the eagle is a Roman Empire led by who? Esau, aka the so-called white man. All right. And therefore appear no more thou eagle, nor thy horrible wings, okay, nor thy wicked feathers, nor thy malicious heads, nor thy hurtful claws, nor all thy vain body. Okay. Verse 46, that all the earth may be refreshed. No. Like it says in the book of Isaiah, chapter 65 and Revelation 21, right? A new heaven and a new earth, that all the earth may be refreshed and may return, being delivered from thy violence, and that she may hope for the judgment and mercy of him that made her. All right. So we can grab a lot more verses in the last from verses 39 on down, but that's pretty much what it's referring to. Okay. Esau afflicting the meek, oppressing the people, even the peaceable, and destroying the dwellings of them that brought forth fruit. Okay. Our people, and them being judged for it and being destroyed forever. This is what it's getting into. Before I make this lesson any longer, again, we can go into some more verses, but that's pretty much what it's saying. Maybe I'll put some on the screen just to just so brothers can have it, just in case they need the scriptures. But that's what it's pretty much going into. But we did it. We went through the whole chapter. It's indisputable who this is referring to, and I love the scriptures because it's, you can go in here and get direct, quote unquote, secular history too. But Lord willing, this was edifying. Maybe chapter 12 is next. So I believe, chapter 12 is even deeper to me, but we can get that too. But Lord willing, this was edifying. And until the next time, I bid everyone a mighty shalom.